Isn't that the way? Everybody's got the dues in life to pay. Yeah.
All right, what's going on, guys? It's Jonathan McFadden. I'm back with some more Simple Sports talk. And first of all, let me give a quick update because I know it's been a while since I've done any videos. I have been doing some social media stuff, Twitter, Instagram, and a little bit of Facebook. Haven't been recording any videos for a couple reasons. I had some dental work done, so it was kind of difficult for me to talk. And then I've been also looking into making my videos a little more visually pleasing. So I've been looking into getting some video work done and all this other nonsense. But now that I've gotten that stuff sort of taken care of, or at least in the process, I'm going to get back to recording. So I'm going to try to do at least 3 or 4 videos a week. I want to get to a point where I can do them daily. Just right now I don't have the time. But that's just a really brief synopsis of sort of what's been going on. But that's neither here nor there right now because we are back with our next video. And I want to get into football finally. Starting with the NFL today, going to college football a little bit later on. But I do want to wrap up my NBA talk just a little bit. I kind of waited, and this was another reason why I haven't put out any videos recently. I've been waiting for all the off-season stuff to kind of simmer down with all the moves and free agency signings and trades. And obviously that stuff is pretty much over with at this point until we get to another spell, maybe right before the season, and then once the season first starts. But for now, I think we are in a good spot to, sort of review the NBA offseason. I'm going to make it brief because, like I said, I do want to get into football. And it's going to be really brief. So basically, at the end of the day, I think there were a lot of big moves, a lot of key moves for the teams in and of themselves. But I think by and large, as far as the NBA goes, I don't think anybody got any closer to Golden State. Just that simple. Cleveland seems to be like falling apart. I saw an image and I tweeted this out earlier of Ty Lue at the Summer League just asleep. And it's like, is it really that big of a deal? No. And I get it. I'm sure, people of that level are flat out exhausted and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, you are there to evaluate talent and you just can't fall asleep at the job. So they seem to be in disarray. Golden State seems to have, it's like whatever they're doing over there, that's what everyone else needs to be doing because whatever they're doing, it is working. They've been to the finals 3 years in a row. Very easily could be 3-0 in the finals. Also could easily be at least 2-1, or 1-2. I don't think anyone was going to beat them this previous year, but the first year they definitely could have lost if everyone for Cleveland was healthy. But at the end of the day, from this point going forward, they are the top of the top. They're the team to beat. They're the cream of the crop. And they seem to have all their, ducks in a row. And everyone else seems to just be scrambling. So I don't know. Next year is going to be interesting for the other teams. But I think for the end result is going to be by and large the same. I think the Lakers are going to be interesting. I think the Celtics will be somewhat interesting. And a couple other teams. But, for the most part, I'm totally uninterested until we find out what stories are going to be the case next year. So, for example, this year we had the Westbrook triple-double in the battle with him and Harden for MVP, the KD Westbrook thing, the Warriors-Cavs sort of whole story, the drama surrounding Paul George and him leaving Indiana. Like, moving forward into next year, I am interested in those stories. I just don't think for the overall product it's going to matter one bit. It will be something to talk about, and that's pretty much all that it's going to be. It's something to get us to the end. So that's really all I have to say about the NBA. Like I said, I was largely uninterested for a large portion of the year. So that's just sort of where I stand on it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but to me, it's a lot of chaos. It's good chaos because I think the league is actually trending in a good direction as far as watchability. Like, it is fun to watch, and there are a lot of stories. I just don't think it's very competitive, which is obvious given, the level of competition that these teams faced just last year going into the playoffs. One team goes 12-1, the other team goes 12-0, and then they lose one game in the finals. So from a competitive standpoint, it's definitely not going anywhere. From a storyline and watchability standpoint, there's a lot of things to watch. Like Lonzo Ball in LA, I think he's going to be a solid player. Maybe like a low-level superstar. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. But I think he is definitely going to change life for the Lakers because, again, it is Summer League, and there's a lot of things that you cannot even regard in Summer League. But there are some things in Summer League that you can, and one of those is his ability to pass the ball because I don't care who the competition is. Those passes, you still have to physically make them, and the passes he's made, some of them, it's just like, A, how did you see that? And B, like they are pinpoint passes. So I think they do have something to be excited about. But that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. I'm anxious for next year, but I won't really pay attention to much of anything regarding the NBA until we get to next year. So just going to leave that there. Now, let's talk about football, NFL specifically. And today I'm going to do a very quick overview. I'm going to give you essentially my playoff teams for next year. So I'm going to pick the division winners and the 2 wild cards from both the AFC and NFC, and then I'm going to tell you who I think wins the Super Bowl. Now, keep in mind, this is post-draft, obviously, preseason, and obviously pre-season as well. So I'm going ahead and tell you now, this will change maybe a few times between now and the start of the season, and then it'll probably change once more, let's say halfway through the season, once I get a good enough idea of all the other teams. I think, 7 to 8 weeks into the season, I'll be able to give a more, I guess, realistic answer. But just based on what I saw last year, the moves made in the offseason, including the draft, this is where I think all the teams stand as of right now. I'm just going to go division by division, pick the winners, and just sort of give you a brief explanation of why they are and why the other teams aren't. So let's start with the AFC East. And, of course, you have the Patriots. I don't think there's anything really to discuss. The team that won the Super Bowl went out and got better. So I don't think there's really anything to discuss. Not to mention, no other team in that division has a quarterback. Tannehill he'll get you through the season. He's not going to win you a championship. The Jets, I don't even know what they're doing. And the Bills just fired their head coach. Not literally just, but I'm saying they fired him, obviously, going into this year. I don't think anyone other than the Patriots in that division maybe goes 500. Maybe the Dolphins go 500. Outside of that, I don't know what you're going to get out of that, which is unfortunate because the Bills actually have, if you look at their team on paper, aside from quarterback, they have a pretty good team. Same thing with the Jets outside of quarterback. Like, they have a decent team. Dolphins as well, but quarterback, again, proves to be the most important position. And then second to that is the guy closest to the quarterback. And none of those teams really have a guy that they definitely don't have both. One, they may have one or the other, and none of those guys have a quarterback. So on the defensive side of the ball, do they really have someone that could change the game for you? And I don't think any of them do. And I'm talking about like a Von Miller type. Like, none of those guys have that. So Patriots win that division easily. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. AFC North, I have the Steelers coming out of that division, largely for the same reason. Now, the Bengals and the Ravens have a quarterback. I actually like Flacco. I think if Flacco gets to the playoffs, he is a different person for some reason. But their problem is getting to the playoffs. Now, they did get a little better this year, so we'll see. But I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the Steelers. I think if the Ravens or the Bengals get in, it's going to be a wild card spot. But I think the Steelers win that division pretty easily. I just don't think anyone else can compete with them on offense. AFC South. Now, this is a little bit of a home pick because I am a Titans fan, but also I am objective, so it makes sense to me. And I look at that team last year, and they went 9-7, and they easily, and you could say this about a lot of teams, obviously, but they easily could have won another 2 or 3 games. They gave away a couple of games at the end. And I'm looking at their schedule, which is a little rough. But my thing is with that division is I'm looking at the other teams. And the only team to me that scares me is the Texans. The Jaguars I'm not concerned with whatsoever. The Colts, they should be the best team in the division, but for some reason they just can't seem to get it right. And I don't think they get it right this year either. I don't know what it is. The defense is terrible. The offensive line, they can't keep Luck upright. And obviously he is a phenomenal quarterback, but if he's hurt all the time, that doesn't help. So I don't think they're as I said, they should be the winners of that division because they do have the best quarterback. But there's something off with the Colts. I don't know what it is. And the Texans, outside of quarterback, have one of the best teams in the league on paper. But again, they don't have a quarterback. Now, they did draft Watson. They have Tom Savage, who's probably going to start most, if not all of the year. I guess it really depends on how he plays. So they're the only team that really scares me, and it's only because of their defense. I don't think offensively they're that great. Let me take that back. I think they're just fine on offense. I just don't think they're so great on offense that it will exceed everyone else on offense by so much. So I give my Titans a chance to win that division. I think they can win that division. I actually think they go 10-6 this year and win the division. So they get a game up from what they were last year. They should have went 10-6 last year and won the division, but they lost to the Jaguars at the end of the year in an ugly defeat. So that sort of threw a wrench in that whole ordeal. But I think this year they finally get it right. Mariota seems to be the guy, at least for the next, 5 to 10 years, 5 to 7 years, 8 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think at the very minimum, he's going to be a good quarterback. I'm not ready to say he's going to be great yet, but he's definitely made some strides. And then they can run the ball as well. Their defense needs some work, especially the secondary. But they did add Adoree Jackson in the draft, and they signed Logan Ryan, who is a solid corner, but he struggles with the quicker guys. I think with the bigger guys, he's okay. So we'll see how he pans out. I think he's going to be a good pickup. It just is a matter of Jackson and the rest of those guys that they signed in the offseason, if they can sort of, step up to the plate. So we'll see. I do hope that they win a division, obviously, because it's been a long time since that's ever happened and even made the playoffs. So I think if they make the playoffs this year, for me, that is a solid win, solid plus. And lastly, AFC West. I think this one, along with the AFC East, is a pretty straightforward pick. The Raiders, I think, win that division pretty easily. I think the Chiefs are just... I don't know how to define the Chiefs because it's like every year. They remind me of the Chargers a couple of years ago. For about 4 or 5 years, every year you went into the season, the Chargers, it was like, oh my God, they should be really good. And they would even start off really well, and they would either falter out at the end, or if they made the playoffs, they would get smoked in the first round. And that was that. And the Chiefs, to me, seem similar to that. It's like they look good, they play pretty well throughout the season, and then they get to the playoffs and something happens. Whether it's an injury, whether it's someone just having an off day, whether they just get rolled over by just a much better team. Something just seems to be missing with the Chiefs. And maybe it's at the quarterback position. I do like Mahomes. I think Mahomes is going to be great. I think he was overlooked by some people because he's out of Texas Tech, and a lot of people don't trust quarterbacks coming out of those really those heavy spread offenses. But what you have to remember is that defense, I think, it was the worst defense in the country last year. So he had to make up for a lot of mistakes. And the guy has unbelievable arm talent. Like I've seen him make some throws that are just phenomenal. So I think he, as far as quarterbacks go, if you were to ask me if I were up to take a quarterback, he would have been the guy I would have taken was Mahomes. But again, that's just me. I don't know if he's going to play this year. I doubt it. Maybe he'll get in sparingly. He does have a good guy to learn behind in Alex Smith, who is not a great talent, but he's a smart talent. And I think that's what Mahomes needs, because I think Mahomes has every arm. Like, you can check off every box for the arm portion. I just think mentally having Alex Smith around and Andy Reid, who's worked pretty well with some quarterbacks that weren't necessarily phenomenal, I think Mahomes is going to do well in Kansas City. It's just a matter of how long, I guess, it's going to take before he takes the reins from Alex Smith. So we'll see. So those are my 4 division winners: Oakland, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and New England. For my wild card, this is one that I tried to just look at the division and see who I thought could potentially win the division. And the 2 teams I came up with were Kansas City and Houston. I don't think Baltimore gets in or Bengals gets in over Pittsburgh, and I don't think their record would be good enough for them to get in as a wild card. I think Houston takes one spot, and I think Kansas City takes the other spot. I don't think Kansas City deserves it, per se, because I don't think they're going to do anything with it but get smoked again in the first round, but that's just me. Again, being objective, I think they have the best team outside of those others to take those 2 wild card spots. So that's it for the AFC. And I think the Patriots move out of that conference to go to the Super Bowl. I don't know how the other rounds will shake up, so I'm just kind of skipping those for now. But I am going to go with the Patriots for the Super Bowl coming out of the AFC. For the NFC, we have the NFC West, and I think the Seahawks win by default. I think their window might be closed for another 2 or 3 years. Now, Russell Wilson is obviously really young, so he has a lot of time. But I think for the next 2 or 3 years, I think they need to sort of revamp what they're doing. I think they win the division this year by default. But I will tell you this. If Jared Goff can be a serviceable quarterback, an Alex Smith type, for example, and I'm not saying he is even remotely close to that. I'm just saying if he can amount to something like that, maybe, I don't know, 20, 22, 24 touchdowns and, I don't know, 10, 12 picks, something like that. Not a fantastic quarterback, but not someone that's necessarily going to lose the game for you. I think they could actually be a 500 team given that defense, because Aaron Donald is a problem, okay? He is a problem. And if they can just be serviceable on offense, they should be able to run the ball. They have a good defense. It really is about Jared Goff. They won 4 games last year, and their team was terrible on offense. They couldn't move the ball on themselves, and they were able to win 4 games. So if Goff can be a halfway decent quarterback, I think they'll be a 500 team. I'm not ready to go to playoffs, but I think realistically they could win somewhere between 6 to 8 games if Goff plays okay. NFC South, this is another one I think that is just going to happen by default. I think the Falcons will win this division just by default. But I will tell you this. And actually, this is that division that it's like everyone gets it wrong just because the winner changes so much. I want to say the Falcons, but the Falcons could easily come out and go, 6-10. They've done it before, and they're coming off a devastating Super Bowl loss. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they just have a stinker of a year. And now that I think about it, actually, I think I'm going to take the Panthers and win that division. I think they got a little better on offense. I think Cam is going to bounce back from the bad year last year. I'm going to take the Panthers to win that division. NFC North, I think it's a toss-up between Minnesota and Green Bay. Minnesota, I'm in question because they, again, have a really good defense. But for some reason, they just faltered last year. They started off, I think, 5-1 or 6-1. And then it was like, dude, they're really good. And all of a sudden, they just kind of fell off the map. So Green Bay won that division, I think, by default last year. I think you're going to get another repeat of the same thing this year. So I think Green Bay wins that division. And then finally, and I saved this one for last on purpose, NFC East, probably the most hated division in football, top to bottom. Those teams and those fans hate each other more than anyone I've ever met in my life. I think the Giants win that division. I think the Cowboys take a step back. I don't think the Eagles are quite ready yet with Carson Wentz. And I think the Redskins are just kind of a 500 team. They'll squeak into the playoffs if they happen to get a wild card spot. But other than that, they're just kind of there. They're entertaining to watch for the Redskins fans. I don't think they're really a serious team, especially with Kirk Cousins kind of in flux right now as far as his contract goes. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I don't think the Eagles are quite ready. I think the Eagles would be really good in another year or two with Wentz, but I don't think they're ready this year. I think the Cowboys take a step back, not necessarily in a bad way. I just think their schedule this year is going to be tougher, so it's going to be hard to repeat record-wise what they did last year. It's going to be hard to do that, period. It's not easy to just go win, 12, 13, 14 games. It doesn't happen that way. I think the Cowboys go 9-7. I think the Giants go 11-5 after looking at the schedule, and I think they win that division. And that leads me to my 2 wild card spots. And so for my 2 wild card spots, I don't know, to be honest. I think the Cowboys take 1 because I think they're still good enough to make the playoffs. I just don't think they win the division. So I think the Cowboys take 1. The last one, quite honestly, I think you can just throw anyone in there. You can throw Minnesota in there. Maybe even a Washington you can throw in there. I don't know for sure. Maybe the Falcons squeak into the last wild card spot. Honestly, it's irrelevant for this purpose because I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl anyway. And since I'm not picking the games in between then, I don't think it really matters. But for the sake of having a team, I'll go with the Vikings to make that last wild card spot. So you get the Giants, Vikings, Packers, Cowboys, Panthers, and Seahawks in the NFC. And I have the Giants coming out of the NFC to have a rematch, the finale of the trilogy, Pats, Giants. Now, I will admit, this is largely out of a story that I want. I do want a culmination of things. I want to see the Giants in the Super Bowl because I want to see Odell in the Super Bowl. I like Odell. I want Odell to eventually win a championship. But I want Odell to get to that level because I want that switch to go off to say, hey, you know what? We are good enough to do this if I participate in a professional manner and not act like a kid on the sidelines or elsewhere and go out hanging out on boats with Justin Bieber. Also, the rematch of Pats Giants is something that I think a ton of people, if you want to talk about ratings, think about this, all right? You want to talk about a sport, it's the most watched sport in America, right? And you have the best quarterback, I think, ever. Definitely the best quarterback that I ever saw. Against sort of the blue-collar team of the league and the Giants, or one of them anyway. And you get the trilogy, you get the rematch, and I think the Pats win the Super Bowl against the Giants. A good one, a great one. I think one for the ages, right? Similar to last year. Maybe not quite as good as last year just because of the comeback and all that stuff, but I think just the overall feel leading into it, I think is going to be as exciting as we were fourth quarter watching last year. I think you're going to carry that momentum into the Super Bowl if you get a Giants-Pats rematch. And I think my theory, my story that I want to see is Pats Giants Super Bowl, Pats win in a great game. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady retire off back-to-back Super Bowls after beating the Giants, and Garoppolo takes over the Pats, and they just sort of move forward from there. Maybe Bill Belichick doesn't retire, but I think if the Pats win the Super Bowl this year, I think Brady does retire. I don't know about Bill Belichick. It would be cool for the story if they were to beat the Giants and they both retire and just call it a day from there. That would be an awesome story. So that's what I came up with, and it's not out of the realm of possibility, obviously, because I think both teams are going to be pretty good. I think the Giants really laid an egg last year in the Super Bowl. Hey, they really laid an egg not in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs last year, and I think they need to make up for that. And I think they do this year. I think they get to the playoffs, and I think they make it to the Super Bowl only to lose to the Patriots. So that's it. That's my very vague preseason predictions. I'm going to have some more in-depth analysis and stuff like that later. I have my power rankings that I'm working on, so that's almost done. And when I do that, I'll give a more in-depth analysis of each team. I'll probably do each division in its own ranking, and then give an overall ranking for all the teams once I'm done. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped about football. Football is my number one sport. That's what I love the most. I'll do college as well coming up fairly soon. And like I said, I'm working on a lot of things for the video, so bear with me as time goes. Got a lot of moving parts out there, and I'm trying to get everything, consolidated as quickly as I can. It's just being a one-man show, being fairly new, and also this not being a full-time thing for me. It's something I'm doing on the side. I hope they make it a full-time thing at some point. But I do have an actual full-time job. I actually work 2 jobs, so it's kind of difficult for me time-wise to get these videos out. But I'm working on it. Again, if you really want to see what I'm talking about, go to Instagram and Twitter and follow me there. That's where I do most of my talking on a daily basis. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts on the NFL for this year. Like I said, Pats Giants Super Bowl. I think the Pats win it. I think the hoodie, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady retire after winning the Super Bowl. And I think that would be, if you want to talk about the story of stories for this year, like that would be the ultimate, icing on the cake to what's already everyone's favorite sport, or most people's favorite sport, is football. And the amount of people that watch the NFL, during the season and pay attention to things in the off season is phenomenal. And coming off the Super Bowl and really coming off the playoffs that we had last year, because there were a couple of good games. The Giants-Packers was pretty good. Although the scoreboard may not indicate, the Pats-Steelers, it was fun to watch. The Super Bowl obviously was amazing. So I think taking that momentum into next year, along with the Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, by the way, involved in another incident. I don't know all the details as of right now, but that guy can't seem to stay out of trouble. So that storyline, will they improve? Was it a fluke? All that good stuff. It's going to be a pretty exciting year. And I think if it ends in, the way I just laid out, I think that'll be one of the best stories that we've seen in the NFL in quite a long time. So let me know what you guys think. I am going to wrap this video up here, and I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow for the next video. So take care. Peace.